Chef forces a simple woman to cook a complex dish, unaware she is a Michelin star chef. In an upscale Chicago restaurant kitchen, arrogant executive chef Maxwell Richards stares condescendingly at Amelia Hartwell. With a cruel smile, he forces the seemingly inexperienced redhead to prepare a beef Wellington, the most technical dish on his menu. But Maxwell doesn't know what everyone in Europe's culinary world does. Amelia Amy Hartwell isn't just any chef. She's culinary royalty hiding in plain sight. Amelia Hartwell had once commanded the most prestigious kitchen in Paris. Her restaurant, L'Étoile, earned 3 Michelin stars faster than any establishment in history. Food critics described her beef Wellington as transcendent, a dish so perfect it brought diners to tears. But 2 years ago, Amelia walked away from it all, burned out from the relentless pressure of maintaining culinary perfection. Now, at 34, she stood in the gleaming kitchen of Elevation, one of Chicago's most acclaimed restaurants, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, looking nothing like the celebrated chef whose portrait hung in culinary institutes worldwide. She wore no designer clothes, no expensive watch, just plain black pants and a white button-up shirt. "I'm looking for a line cook position," she told the hostess earlier that morning, using her middle name. Amy Hartwell. Amelia was researching a book about rediscovering joy in cooking, working her way through America's top restaurants incognito. She'd deliberately changed her appearance, dyeing her naturally blonde hair red and wearing minimal makeup. In Europe, she'd rarely allowed photographers near her kitchen, making her practically unrecognizable to Americans. Maxwell Richards, Elevation's executive chef, barely glanced at her resume. At 42, he'd built a reputation for technical precision and tyrannical management. His tall frame and perpetually stern expression intimidated everyone in his kitchen. "Experience?" he snapped, blue eyes cold. "Some formal training in France," Amelia replied truthfully, downplaying her culinary pedigree. "Small restaurants mostly," Maxwell scoffed. "We need extra hands for the James Beard dinner tomorrow. You'll prep vegetables today. Don't cut yourself." Amelia smiled politely. "Thank you for the opportunity." Throughout the morning, she worked quietly, observing the kitchen's dynamic. Maxwell berated his staff constantly, sending dishes back for minor imperfections while taking credit for every successful plate. Several times, she noticed him changing other chefs' creations, adding unnecessary garnishes before presentation. During lunch service, Maxwell hovered over her station, criticizing her knife technique despite her perfect brunoise. "This isn't some diner kitchen," he sneered. "We maintain standards here." Amelia nodded respectfully, hiding her amusement. The technique she was using had been taught to her by a Japanese master chef who'd spent 50 years perfecting the craft, a method clearly beyond Maxwell's understanding. As the afternoon progressed, she could sense the other staff watching her, with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. None of them knew that the simple new prep cook was silently evaluating every aspect of the restaurant for her upcoming book, Behind the Kitchen Door, America's Culinary Identity Crisis. The following day, Elevation was in chaos preparing for the James Beard Foundation dinner. Maxwell paced the kitchen, barking orders and finding fault with everyone's work. The pressure was palpable as staff rushed to arrange elaborate appetizers and prepare complex sauces. "You!" Maxwell suddenly pointed at Amelia, who was quietly preparing vegetables. "Get over here." She approached calmly, wiping her hands on her apron. "We have a VIP table that specially requested beef Wellington," he announced loudly enough for the entire kitchen to hear. "Since you claim to have French training, let's see what you can do." A hush fell over the kitchen. Everyone knew Maxwell's beef Wellington was his signature dish, one he personally prepared for important guests. It was also notoriously difficult, requiring perfect timing and technique. The pastry needed to be golden and flaky, while the tenderloin remained precisely medium rare. The mushroom duxelles had to be neither too wet nor too dry. "Sir, I've never made your version before," Amelia replied softly. "Exactly," Maxwell smiled coldly. "Let's see this French training in action. Either you make it perfectly, or you're fired. The recipe is on the station," Sous Chef Daniel whispered as he passed. "He's setting you up to fail. Nobody touches his Wellington recipe." The other cooks exchanged knowing glances. They'd seen this before, Maxwell publicly humiliating new staff to establish dominance. Amelia examined the recipe card. It was technically correct, but lacked the nuances that elevated a good Wellington to greatness. The mushroom duxelles called for basic cremini mushrooms, not the blend of wild varieties she'd perfected. The pastry technique was standard, missing the butter fold that created exceptional flakiness. As Maxwell walked away with a satisfied smirk, Amelia felt a familiar sensation, the focused calm that had earned her those Michelin stars. This Wellington wouldn't just meet his expectations, it would exceed them in ways he couldn't imagine. She began gathering ingredients, her movements precise and efficient. The kitchen staff watched, fascinated by her sudden transformation from quiet prep cook to someone who moved with unmistakable authority. Amelia tied her apron more securely and assessed the situation. She had roughly 3 hours to create a masterpiece. Around her, staff stole curious glances while Maxwell periodically walked by, his expression smug as he expected her imminent failure. She first inspected the beef tenderloin, running her fingers along its surface. It was good quality, but not exceptional. She knew that proper preparation could compensate for this. Next, she examined the mushrooms, puff pastry, and other ingredients, mentally cataloging how to maximize their potential. "Need some help figuring out where to start?" Maxwell asked mockingly, leaning against the counter. "No, thank you," Amelia replied evenly. "I'm just assessing what I'm working with." "It's just beef Wellington, not rocket science," he said loudly enough for others to hear. "Though I suppose for someone with your limited experience, it might as well be." Several cooks winced at his condescension. Daniel, the sous chef, shot her a sympathetic look. Maxwell continued hovering, pointing out supposed inefficiencies in her prep work. "The mushrooms need to be chopped much finer. This isn't peasant food." Amelia nodded politely but continued working her way. She reduced the mushrooms with precision, adding a touch of Madeira wine she'd found in the pantry. Not in Maxwell's recipe, but crucial for depth of flavor. She worked methodically, her hands moving with practiced confidence through each step. The kitchen staff began noticing something unusual. Despite Maxwell's badgering, Amelia seemed completely unfazed. More striking was how she handled each ingredient, with respect and intuition that spoke of experience far beyond what her resume suggested. When she prepared the duxelle, she didn't measure ingredients but judged them by smell and texture. When she seared the tenderloin, she never checked the time, but knew exactly when to turn it by the caramelization of the crust. "You're going to overcook it," Maxwell stated flatly as she seared the beef. Without looking up, Amelia replied, "It needs another 20 seconds on this side for proper Maillard reaction." Maxwell blinked, surprised by her use of the technical term and confident tone. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as he watched her work. The kitchen had fallen into a strange rhythm. Other preparations continued around them, but Amelia had become the focal point. Her movements were deliberate, almost hypnotic, the practiced gestures of someone who had performed these actions thousands of times. As she prepared the mushroom duxelles, she altered Maxwell's recipe subtly but significantly. She added shallots caramelized to the edge of sweetness, a whisper of fresh thyme, and a splash of cognac that flamed dramatically before being incorporated. The aroma that rose from her station drew appreciative sniffs from passing cooks. "That's not my recipe," Maxwell interjected, his voice tighter than before. "You're right," Amelia acknowledged calmly. "I'm adding a few elements that complement the beef profile." "My Wellington doesn't need improvement," he snapped. Amelia just smiled. "Consider it an interpretation rather than an improvement." The tenderloin, now perfectly seared, rested as she worked on the pastry. Her hands moved with exceptional speed and dexterity, creating a latticed pattern so intricate and precise that several staff members paused their work to watch. Daniel, the sous chef, couldn't contain his curiosity. "Where did you learn that technique?" he whispered when Maxwell stepped away. "A little place in Loire Valley," she replied simply, omitting that she'd actually invented the technique, which had since been adopted by pastry chefs worldwide. When it came time to construct the Wellington, Amelia assembled the components with surgical precision. She wrapped the tenderloin in prosciutto, then the mushroom mixture, creating perfect even layers. The puff pastry enveloped everything with no air pockets or tears, a technical achievement that even Maxwell couldn't criticize. "You need to egg wash it twice for proper color," Maxwell instructed, finding something to correct. Amelia nodded but added a sprinkle of flaky sea salt after the second wash, a signature touch that had become her trademark in Europe. As she worked, a peculiar transformation occurred in the kitchen's atmosphere. The staff, initially amused by Maxwell's attempt to humiliate the newcomer, now watched with growing respect. Even Maxwell's demeanor shifted subtly from condescension to watchful curiosity. When Amelia slid the Wellington into the oven, she didn't set a timer. "Aren't you timing it?" Maxwell challenged. "I'll know when it's ready," she replied. 42 minutes at 400 degrees, he insisted. Amelia shook her head slightly. "This one needs 38 minutes. The thickness of the pastry and the temperature of the meat before wrapping affect cooking time." Maxwell stared at her, brow furrowed, as if seeing her properly for the first time.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
While the Wellington baked, Amelia began preparing accompaniments, another deviation from protocol, as Maxwell normally assigned these tasks to other cooks. She reduced red wine and veal stock into a silken sauce, adding a knob of European-style butter at the end for perfect sheen. She roasted baby carrots with honey and thyme, cooking them just past al dente to intensify their natural sweetness. Maxwell watched with increasing intensity, saying nothing but observing every move. The kitchen staff sensed the shifting dynamic. Something about this unassuming new hire didn't fit. She worked with too much confidence, too much precision. Sous Chef Daniel approached Maxwell. "Chef, there's something strange about her technique. The way she handles a knife, the way she tastes everything. It's like..." "Like what?" Maxwell demanded. "Like watching a master," Daniel finished quietly. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. He pulled out his phone and began searching something, his expression growing more troubled with each swipe. 37 minutes after placing the Wellington in the oven, Amelia moved toward it without checking a clock. "It's only been 37 minutes, Maxwell called out, checking his watch. "It's ready," she stated simply. "You can't possibly know that." Amelia turned to him, and for the first time, her polite deference fell away. "The pastry has achieved optimal color. The internal temperature of the beef will be precisely 128 degrees, which will rise to 132 during resting, a perfect medium rare. The aromas indicate proper caramelization of the pastry without over-rendering the fat in the prosciutto layer." The kitchen went completely silent. No one spoke with such authority to Chef Maxwell, especially not a prep cook on her second day. More striking was the technical language she used, the vocabulary of an executive chef, not a line cook. Amelia maintained eye contact with Maxwell, a silent challenge in her gaze. In that moment, they both knew a decision point had arrived. She could continue the charade, or she could reveal her true expertise. Without breaking eye contact, she opened the oven door and retrieved the Wellington, which was indeed a perfect golden brown. Amelia placed the beef Wellington on the marble counter to rest. It was a vision of culinary perfection, the pastry golden and glossy, the latticework maintaining its definition, the structure perfectly proportioned. A rich, enticing aroma filled the kitchen. 7 minutes to rest before slicing, she announced, her tone no longer deferential, but matter of fact. Maxwell stared at the creation, then back at his phone screen. His face had paled slightly. "Your name is Amelia Hartwell," he said slowly. "Not Amy." She smiled slightly. "I go by both. You're not just French trained," he continued, his voice tight. "You're Amelia Hartwell of L'Etoile, 3 Michelin stars, James Beard, outstanding chef, international culinary ambassador." A collective gasp traveled through the kitchen. Staff members who had been pretending not to listen abandoned all pretense, turning to stare openly. One cook nearly dropped a tray of appetizers. "Guilty," Amelia acknowledged, removing her apron. "Though I've been taking a sabbatical for the past 2 years." That's impossible," stammered a young line cook. "Amelia Hartwell is a legend. She's like the Michael Jordan of cooking." "Actually, I'm standing right here," Amelia replied with gentle humor. "And I'd argue Michael Jordan is the Amelia Hartwell of basketball." A few nervous laughs broke the tension, but Maxwell didn't smile. His expression had hardened into something between humiliation and rage. "Why are you here?" he demanded. "To spy on my techniques? To steal my recipes?" Amelia raised an eyebrow. "I'm researching a book about American restaurant culture, about finding joy in cooking again." She gestured around the kitchen. "Though I must say there doesn't seem to be much joy in this particular kitchen." Before Maxwell could respond, Daniel approached the Wellington and asked, "May I?" Amelia nodded. "It's ready now." With reverent care, Daniel sliced through the Wellington. The cross-section revealed perfectly defined layers. The pastry crisp yet delicate. The duxelles dark and aromatic. The beef, a perfect rosy medium rare, with juices pooling but not running. "Mon Dieu," Daniel whispered, slipping into French in his awe. Maxwell stared at the perfect slice, his professional eye unable to find a single flaw. For a moment, the conflict on his face was painful to watch, the clash between his pride and his recognition of undeniable mastery. Amelia picked up a small spoon and dipped it into the sauce she'd prepared. She tasted it critically, then added a single grain of salt and stirred. "Perfect," she concluded. Then, with the quiet authority that had once commanded the finest kitchen in Paris, she said, "Plate it. Our guests are waiting." As the perfectly plated beef Wellington left the kitchen in the hands of the senior server, a tense silence descended. The staff hovered nervously, pretending to work while watching the unfolding drama between the two chefs. Maxwell finally found his voice. "This is absurd. You come into my kitchen under false pretenses, undermine my authority." "I didn't come to undermine you," Amelia interrupted calmly. "I came to observe, to learn. Every kitchen has something to teach. And what exactly have you learned from mine?" His tone was scathing. Amelia looked thoughtful. "That technical skill alone doesn't make exceptional food. Your recipes are precise, your techniques sound, but there's something missing." "And what might that be?" Maxwell challenged, color rising in his face. "Heart," she replied simply. "You cook to impress, not to nourish. Every dish is a demonstration of skill rather than an expression of passion." The bluntness of her assessment stunned the room. No one had ever spoken to Maxwell this way in his own kitchen. "That's rich coming from someone who abandoned her restaurant at its peak," Maxwell shot back. "What happened? Couldn't handle the pressure of maintaining those stars?" A flash of genuine emotion crossed Amelia's face, the first crack in her composed exterior. "I left precisely because cooking had become about the stars, the reviews, the expectations, not about the joy of feeding people." She gestured around the kitchen. "Look at your staff. They're terrified, not inspired." Maxwell glanced around, seeing his team quickly avert their eyes. Some uncomfortable truth in her words seemed to reach him. "Your Wellington recipe should be extraordinary," she continued more gently. "The bones are there, but you've compromised to meet expectations rather than challenging them. Where's the chef who earned his first star? The one who took risks?" Before Maxwell could respond, the dining room manager burst through the door, his face animated with excitement. "Chef! The guests are asking about the Wellington. They're calling it the best they've ever tasted. The James Beard committee member wants to meet the chef responsible." All eyes turned to Maxwell, whose expression cycled through a complex series of emotions: anger, pride, humiliation, and finally, a reluctant recognition.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The dining room erupted in applause as the VIP table savored Amelia's beef Wellington. Through the kitchen doors, they could hear excited murmurs about the extraordinary dish. Maxwell stood frozen, caught between his pride and the undeniable success occurring in his dining room. After a long moment, he made his decision. "Miss Hartwell prepared the Wellington," he announced, the admission clearly costing him. "She should take the credit." Amelia studied him thoughtfully. "Chef Richards, in my experience, the best dishes come from collaboration, not competition." She turned to the dining room manager. "Please inform the guests that their Wellington was prepared by Chef Richards and his team. It's his kitchen, his menu." Maxwell stared at her in disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "Because this isn't about ego," she replied quietly. "It's about remembering why we became chefs in the first place." The tension in Maxwell's shoulders eased slightly. For the first time, he looked at her not as a threat, but as a colleague. "Would you," he began, then cleared his throat. "Would you show me how you prepared the duxelles?" The depth of flavor was remarkable. The request, humble, genuine, transformed the kitchen's atmosphere. Staff members exchanged surprised glances as Amelia smiled warmly. "Of course," she agreed. "And perhaps you could share your technique for that spectacular scallop dish I noticed on the menu. The sear was perfect." For the next hour, as dinner service continued around them, the two chefs worked side by side. Amelia demonstrated her methods openly, explaining each choice and technique. Maxwell, initially stiff, gradually engaged more authentically, asking questions and offering insights of his own. The staff watched in amazement as their tyrannical boss transformed before their eyes, listening, learning, occasionally even smiling. When Amelia suggested a modification to one of his signature sauces, he actually considered it, tasting thoughtfully before nodding in agreement. "You've been applying classic French reduction too rigidly," she explained. "American ingredients often have different water content and flavor compounds. You need to adjust accordingly." "I never thought of it that way," Maxwell admitted. By evening's end, the kitchen had transformed. Staff members approached with questions and ideas, no longer fearful of harsh reprimand. Maxwell, though still maintaining his standards, responded with consideration rather than contempt. 2 weeks later, Amelia stood in Elevation's kitchen for the last time. The atmosphere had changed dramatically. There was focus and discipline, but also laughter and collaboration. Maxwell moved through the space with the same exacting standards, but a new approach, teaching rather than terrorizing. "I still can't believe you're actually leaving," Daniel said, helping her pack her notebooks. "My research here is complete," she replied with a smile. Besides, I have 6 more restaurants to visit before my book is finished. Maxwell approached, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. The publishers called again. They're very interested in your next cookbook. And yours, she reminded him. The collaboration we discussed. He nodded, a hint of excitement breaking through his typically serious demeanor. I've been working on those fusion concepts we talked about. The test dishes are promising. The doors swung open as servers arrived for pre-service briefing. One carried the evening's special, a new iteration of beef Wellington, developed jointly by Maxwell and his team. It maintained his technical precision, but incorporated Amelia's soulful touches. Your legacy here will last, Maxwell acknowledged, extending his hand. Amelia shook it firmly. Not my legacy, just a reminder of what's possible when we cook with both precision and passion. As she walked out the door, Amelia heard something that had been rare during her first days. Maxwell's genuine laughter as he worked alongside his team, creating something extraordinary together. If this story touched your heart, remember that true mastery isn't just about skill, it's about passion and humility. The next time you enjoy a special meal, appreciate the artistry behind it. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the culinary world, subscribe for more stories that remind us success comes not from intimidation, but inspiration. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected teachers.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow.